Thanks, James. Appreciate the lovely introduction. I can't actually see how many people are here today, so I hope there's a few. But yeah, super excited to talk at SaaSGrowth today, and something that I'm very passionate about. I thought long and hard about what to kind of talk through today, and for me, creating a high-performance sales team is something that's so important, I think, in the modern era. So I wanted to kind of break it down really and have a chat about that. I'm sure there might be time for questions at the end. I'm not quite sure the format, but feel free to put any forward to James that you want. So when you think about, guys, building a high-performing sales team, I think the first thing you naturally think of is, oh, process. What process do I put in place? You know, what structure do I do? What tools do we use? I think about it from a different perspective. I think about what culture are you creating within the team, yeah? So when you talk about creating a high-performance team, I think about creating a high-performance culture. And if you create the right culture, then you can have incremental improvement in the team, and the team can then obsess with being the best they can be. So before you think about process and tools and anything else, you know, think about what kind of culture you're building within the organization. So today, basically, guys, I wanted to break that down. And for me, there are 4 cornerstones of building a high-performance sales team. I wanted to talk through each one as we go through it today. So talking about what type of team you build, how you build it, how you hire for high performance, how you train for high performance, and how you coach for high performance. So when I talk about build, I mean, again, going back to what type of culture, what type of team you're building. When you look at hiring, what type of people that you're hiring for, how you train, not just through onboarding, but ongoing, and coaching, not in the sense of call recording, but a different type of coaching that I want to talk through today as we go through it. So the first one, guys, if we talk about building a team, before I started Jiminny, someone said something very interesting to me, which I always remember, which is, you can't complain about your company or your team, you build it. So it's like complaining about you build your own house and complaining that you haven't got a basement or a swimming pool. You created it. And for those of you, I don't know how, there's probably lots of different experience around the table and online today. I started in sales 20 years ago now, next year. And 20 years ago, it used to be a lot different. So for me, this was the old way of sales management, where you'd have much more of a process-driven, data-driven leader, where teams would often work in silos, be highly competitive. Things like the President's Club would be the most important thing. They would generally focus too much on sales activity and be highly reliant on the manager. That was the world that I was first introduced in sales. And for me, there was a collision of 3 things that changed over time, especially over the last sort of 7 to 8 years. So everyone knows millennials became the most dominant employee in the workforce, right? Most managers and leaders today are millennials, so they look and want for different things. The buyer's experience has changed, so we had to get better at selling. They know so much about your company now before they speak to you. They can see reviews, they can see what your employees think on Glassdoor. And as we all know, the selling environment has changed. The roles that people have within the business, BDR, SDR, you know, and obviously selling online and virtually is a completely different experience, which is actually harder, in fact. So you have to be better at storytelling. You have to be better at the solution side. So when you take all these changes and you look at the old approach, for me, when you talk about building a high performance sales team, the very best ones that I see are managers that are coaches first, that are a connector of their team, their AEs, their people, right? So they create an environment where the team are collaborative and they work together. They focus on the customer behavior. They don't always recruit in their own image. They have a diverse team that are different, that add different things to the team. They have a team mentality in terms of winning deals, and they let the team, you know, have good judgment and make decisions together. So that modern approach of a connected team where the sales leader is almost making themselves redundant. And I think, you know, importantly, to have a high performance team, you need to create that culture and think, right, what type of team am I building? What environment am I creating? So that's the first one. When you think about like, what type of team am I building? What environment am I creating? So then you want to create this environment, but you've got to hire the right people. People come in and out of the business, or you could be scaling up really quickly. So when I think about high performance in our business, I think about what attributes am I looking for. So if you're going to create a high performance culture, you can't have people who just think they know how to do the job and that's it, and they're never going to improve or get better. So you need to look for, people who are determined, people who are coachable, people who can take feedback, people who have a growth mindset, that can turn shoulds into musts. And this is relative to our business. Every business will be different, have different complexities and different things that you may be looking for. But, you have to have these attributes where people can put themselves out there and go, I'm great at this, but I need to improve there. Because if you put people into an environment where they're not like that, then you're not going to create a high performance culture where people are constantly ultimately improving. So we've gone through build, we've gone through hire. So the next point, we're talking about training, support and ongoing. So when I look at not just ramping, but ongoing training within, say, sales rep or an AE, you think, right, I want to constantly be training them on the company so they understand our mission and our values and why we sell. Obviously, knowledge is power. They need to understand the product, to a good level. Again, they need to understand the market. They need to understand competitors, and they need to obviously have the right sales skills to do the job, depending on what vertical they've come from. So what I've done previously is, yes, it's important, and I'm sure some of you train these things in and constantly retrain them. But we used to have something called fit to pitch in my previous company, where you would make sure people were, it does what it says on the tin, fit to pitch. So do they know enough about the company? Have they absorbed enough product training? Do they understand the competitors enough? Are their sales skills good enough? And you can, test each of these at a certain level and have a certain requirement for people to do that. So it's not just about training this information in, it's also going, how well are the team retaining it on an ongoing basis? And are they at a good enough level to keep performing? And where do we need to ultimately improve? The last point, when I talk about creating a high performance team, and this is something that sounds so easy on paper, but in reality is very, very different, is having coaching conversations with your team. Now, I'm not talking about what we do and call recording and analytics and listening to conversations. I'm talking about practically interacting with your sales team day to day. So I'll give you an example. James comes to me, the sales rep, and would be like, hey, Tom, so I got this email about a deal. What do you think? So your natural inclination as a human being is, I want to help them. I want to make them feel better. I want to make myself feel good and give the answer. But actually, are you having a coaching conversation? So when James comes to me, I said, James, what do you think? Or James, how do you think you could approach that? That's having a coaching conversation, because you're getting James to think for themselves. That builds trust, that builds curiosity, but ultimately it helps them start to solve the problems, and it goes back to that connected team. So I wasn't always good at this in the early days, and even now I have to check myself sometimes, because it's just way quicker and faster to give the answer, right? But actually, are you having coaching conversations with your team to help them think for themselves and to help them solve problems themselves? So to sum it up, there's 4 things, right? So we talk about building a team, a connected team, enabling your team to be successful with or without you. So you're creating the right culture, the right environment. When you think about hiring, having the right attributes and the skills, that they're coachable, they can take feedback, that you're going to be able to constantly get them to think they can improve and get better. So train, have a formula, to test success. So training in all those things, which I'm sure some of you do, but are you testing how successfully you've trained them in? And then lastly, probably the easiest one on paper, but most difficult, are you having coaching conversations with your team? Are you helping them to solve problems and ultimately think for themselves? Yeah. I really appreciate you listening, guys. Hopefully there's some helpful nuggets of information there. For me, creating a high performance team is really important, but I think often you can get caught in the process, and thinking about it more holistically is the way I like to go.